Welcome to the Astrology Star Sisters Talk over tea with the Leo Decans Astrology and Tarot with my guest Joy Vernon. She's back with me today. Hi, Joy. It's good to see you.
Hi, Liz.
Th-
Glad to be here again. Thanks for inviting me.
oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure, and I hope you'll be back. So, to get a hold of Joy, her website's joyvernon.com, and my website is alightpath.com. And we all like to hear from you. So, we're talking about the Leo Decans. And the decans are dividing the 12 astrological signs into three equal parts of approximately 10 degrees each section. Do you want to share anything more about the decans?
N- no, I think that about covers it. I think that I don't. I think they're just a really interesting way of being able to divide things up uh, and just the fact that they have kind of this Egyptian origin and associated with the fixed stars. There's a lot of things like that I think are really interesting. And in fact, we might even talk a little bit about the Leo Decans in that they are associated with that heliacal rising of Sirius. Um, and and so it gave the Decans this association of a divinity kind of watching over, or controlling or influencing events during about a 10-day period. And so and the because they then got integrated into the Chaldean system, that's how we ended up with the Chaldean planetary rulerships. And so instead of being associated with their fixed stars, which I think there's a number of writers that have come up with some good scholarship on what those fixed stars were, but I don't think it's 100% clear to the scholars what those fixed stars had been that were associated. I haven't studied it extensively, but some of the things I read made it look like we're kind of like, is this it? Was this the star they were talking about? So we focus on those planets, but and that's due to that integration with the Chaldean system.
Well, thank you for that. And yes, I found it a little confusing myself too. So we're in the sign of Leo. It's a fixed, steady, stable sign, anchored and determined. It's fire. It's a sign of the lion, and it's ruled by the sun. The mantra is I show, and it's ego, warm performer, leadership, proud, playful, creative, brave. And the caution is all about me, arrogant, competitive, and inflexibility. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, no, I mean those are all great. I don't know if I wanted to add anything. I think I like to think of the fire signs together and kind of contrast them. And to me, Aries is more about identity, kind of like figuring out who you are. Leo is like, I figured it out. This is who I am. And then Sagittarius is more like, oh, what else could I be? Where else could I go? And so I think that all three of the fire signs do have a really strong core of identity, but those are the different expressions that they really focus on.
Thank you. And we're going to get started with Leo, and the major arcana card is the Strength card. Um, you want to talk about the Strength card?
Well, I think I mean, just starting with the image there, we see this woman in white, and she is holding the jaws of a lion, And depending on the illustration, the lion could look various forms of tame to fierce. Some illustrations, she looks more like, in this one, she looks to me more like she's maybe holding the lion's jaws closed, but he looks a little more fierce. His tongue is lolling and his paw is up, and sometimes it looks more like she's opening the lion's mouth. And I mean, if you look at the lion as anywhere from animal instincts, which I don't see very many animals as animalistic. And so the idea of animal instincts, to me, it doesn't necessarily resonate, because I think of that lion as Leo. It's fierce, it's proud, it's confident. That lion is our power and our leadership. And so I don't feel that her job is to squelch those things. Rather, I feel that her job is to take things that can be out of control and dangerous, and to integrate them and express them. And so, that's a lot about what I see in the card. Do you have in particular interpretations or things that you focus on when you're looking at it?
Well, I like to look at it of that, I think of a lion as strong. And so it's like they're like exchanging her calmness with his strength. It's like they have this connection between the two of them. And so, he's maybe, if it's a he, imparting part of his strength on her, and she's imparting part of her calmness on him. So
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that idea of maybe grace under pressure, grace under fire, that I think that's a really big part of the card. I mean, this is one that it was strength, or it was fortitude in older decks, but when Crowley got a hold of the tarot, he changes one to lust, and so that changes the energy quite a bit. So I don't know if you like to compare decks or not.
yes, I do. And sometimes this is the 11th card, not the 8th card. So because they switched the 11th and the 8th card, the Justice card sometimes with different decks. And just so that our audience knows, this is the Morgan Greer deck that we're using today. So the imagery could be different than if a personal deck that somebody has at home. So
Yeah.
in some cards, I see her hand inside the lion's mouth, and this one, it's on the outside, like you mentioned.
Yeah, and I feel like that hand placement I like it when she's opening that lion's mouth, because lions roar, and it's just like, it's such a release of power. I remember back when I was in Denver, just walking towards the metaphysical store where I had an office, and I was walking past. I wasn't at the coffee shop. I'm like, why wasn't I at the coffee shop? Maybe maybe I was going to the coffee shop, but I thought I was walking past it, and this woman was outside with a little baby, like, well, maybe, I don't know kids very well, but maybe toddler age. Man, that thing was screaming. And the mom was obviously agitated. And when she saw me coming, she got more like, oh my God, she's going to judge me. She's going to judge me. And I just went up to her and I was like, wow, that is so cool. Listen to those lungs. That child is letting you know, like, this is what I have to say. I'm like, that is really awesome. And so the mom was just like, oh my God, thank you. So I think that a lot of that lion energy and the Leo energy is like, roar. What do you have to express right now? Get it out and let others know about it.
Oh, I like that. That's beautiful. So, are we ready to go on to the sun ingressed into
Yeah,
Leo?
yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Let's take a look at that.
So on
So,
the day that we start the decans, go ahead.
no, you do your
Okay.
introduction. That's perfect.
Okay. So the sun is circled kind of in a pink color, and at the bottom of the chart in the fourth house there, and um, the sun, when it enters Leo, we start the Leo decans. And so this is a representation of, okay, what was the sun doing, or what is the sun doing on this date, um, on the 22nd? And it's opposite Pluto, and Pluto, is a very powerful planet. And of course, Pluto is not in Leo, but there's that opposition. So to me, that Pluto, like look under things, search for the answers. And also, since Pluto is in the 10th house, and this is a chart for Seattle, you know, it can be the power that's trying to rule over everything, so to speak, but it's in opposition to that sun to have its own power, so to speak. So, um, kind of pay attention to what might come up with that. And then we have the sun is sextile to Mars, and that's in the first house. So a sextile is usually a cooperative energy, but Mars is an action energy, of, and it's in Gemini. So words, I would say this is a good time for writing, um, channeling, journaling, all those kind of things. But also, like, kind of, Mars doesn't think before it speaks, and it's in the speaking sign. So you could possibly say something you don't want to say. And since it kind of connects with that sun, and the sun's opposite Pluto, it's like some things that you even have in yourself that maybe you've been wanting to express, you might express, but sometimes a healthier way is to write about it first and then express it. And then the sun is trine Neptune in the blue. So, there could be a lot of ideas rolling around, and Neptune's in the last degree. And so sometimes when a planet's in the anaretic degree, the 29th degree, it can be impulsive. So, I would say try to be calm and centered and take your time and don't make rash decisions. That's what I would say. Do you want to add?
I love that. I love that interpretation. This is really interesting because I I mean, one of the things I think of with Pisces in particular, maybe the water signs in general, is the increased intuitive capacity that those signs bring. And especially when you mention Mars and Gemini and the rashness of communication that can bring about, a really ready remediation for that is that more intuitive approach. And so the very fact that the sun is aspecting both the rash, impulsive Mars communicator and that Neptune and Pisces, I think it. I think it. It's our lady and our lion. It's like Neptune and Pisces is our lady that is like intuitive and introspective and meditative, and she is slowing down that Mars in Gemini, brash, bold, expressive, uh, energy, and getting those things to work together for a really probably a really nice overall experience there. I'm like, what day is this? What time? I'm gonna do some writing that day. um, so yeah, I think those are really nice, and I almost always recommend approaching all of these things. My background is much more in spirituality and in meditation than it is in, well, certainly then in astrology. The tarot stuff kind of went hand in hand with all of those studies. And I really recommend working with the planetary placements, working with the tarot cards via meditation, and so this looks like it looks like a good time to do some of that.
I kind of think of it, the astrology behind it, as um, the energy behind the scenes that is there, but we're still in this decan in the card, so it's kind of like a behind the scenes, or it's we can tap into that energy if we want, or it's
Yeah.
supported. So
Well,
okay.
and I think also because it was an ingress chart, that energy still will hold throughout the month. So yeah, that is it's not just like at this day and time we get this energy. It's an ingress chart, so that does encapsulate some of our qualities that we get for the month. So I think that that can be kind of nice.
Right. It's like if you've been thinking about a book, it's like you maybe that Pluto could help you write that book too, because it's like bringing that information to the surface. It almost feels like somebody could almost just channel a book and write it, you know, like in
In a
3 weeks
month.
or yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
do a NaNoWriMo, but in the month of Leo.
But or get a good
You get
start on it too.
3,000
So
words done in a month. That's a good challenge. That's a good challenge.
so now we're at Leo Decan number 1, the 5 of Wands, and it's about strife. It's Saturn in Leo, and it's from 0 degrees to 9 degrees and 59 minutes of Leo. And the approximate dates are July 22nd, 23rd to August 1st or 2nd.
Yeah, and I'll point out that those are the solar dates, so that's the dates that the sun moves through that particular decan. Um, yeah, I think one of the first things to look at when we're thinking about this, I always like to start with the astrology itself and what does Saturn bring to Leo. Either now, remember, this is Saturn ruling the first decan of Leo. But if we can imagine when Saturn is in Leo, what kind of energies are we bringing? We've got Saturn, which is rules and regulations. Saturn is endings. Saturn is structure. And Leo was the in the spotlight, the dramatist and actor, and that great expressive energy. And so there's almost, I don't know, there's kind of a behind the scenes. Saturn to me is like, I used to do theater, so I'm like, you go to opening night and see an amazing show, and you're like, wow, great, such great acting. And if you know a little bit more about theater, you're probably like, such great directing. And the truth of the matter is there are so many people that did so much work to make that happen. And that's probably a lot of that Saturn structure and building sets and designing lights. And I used to be a stage manager, like all the structure of all the cues and exactly the timing for them and all of that kind of stuff. There's so much that happens kind of behind the scene so that those few people on stage can really shine. And so when you get Saturn and Leo, those are some of the things that I might think about. What are some of the interpretations you think of with Saturn and Leo?
Well, I like your analogy of the stage, but even the actors and performers have to practice and put in the time to perfect it. So to me, that's the discipline of Saturn and Leo. It's like, yes, we have this beautiful show to perform, but we have to do the discipline to do it. Even though, people are pretty cool at improv, but that's a whole different kind of acting or performance than, you know, say a written play that was written, for people to perform. So it would be much different. So I would say the discipline to bring it all together.
I love it. Yeah, discipline's one of my favorite keywords for Saturn. So yeah, the discipline of the craft. We could say that Saturn and Leo, the discipline of the art, is a lot of what Saturn and Leo is about. Um, I love that. Going into the card image, you know, the image typically shows what appears to be some kind of conflict or competition. Depending on the illustration, sometimes it looks a little bit more like a game. Sometimes it looks more like a fight. There were these, somebody back on a while ago on Facebook was posting a bunch of tarot jokes and things like that, and the caption for this card was "stupid tent." And you can imagine trying to put a tent up and the poles are falling down and you can't get it to hold its shape, and so there's a lot of frustration. And fives in general are associated with Mars, so some of that Mars energy even seeps in to this, and we can see some frustration in here. But to go to our layout of the minor arcana, or the 36 numbered cards minus the four aces, and map those around the 36 decans, this is the one that aligns with Saturn in Leo. And so Saturn is, again, the discipline, the structure that you need. You need those poles to hold the tent up. It can be, I think of Jupiter mainly as leadership, but I do think that Saturn can be more of a grumpy leader, or a mean, or curmudgeonly leader. And so there's, in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, the one of the guys of the five wands is actually stepped back a little bit, and he's holding his wand straight up like he's about to join into the group, but it also makes him look a little bit like a majorette, or a leader of a marching band. And so he could be directing what's going on. So like this idea again of leadership or discipline that helps to organize the creation that's happening here. I think those are just a variety of ways, not exhaustive, although I can talk, of looking at that card image. What are some things you've always liked about that one?
Well, I've heard about the tent years ago, and it's like, which pole goes in first? It's like they all want to put their pole in first, but they don't even know if that's the right pole to start with.
Exactly. Oh my God. Exactly.
And it can be that they all have different ideas, but which one goes in which order? It's like, there, you might need to do a little bit more searching, or playing with it, like putting the puzzle together of what order is correct to make this happen.
Yeah, and that makes me think of Leo. If you think of Leo again as self-expression, or I want my voice to be heard, or I have something that I want to be recognized for. It's kind of that, I think of a caucus, and each person needs to be able to step up and have their say. But if they're all trying to talk at the same time, nothing is getting done. And again, Saturn as our curmudgeonly leader, or as our discipline, or something like that, is like, okay, each person, you get a set amount of time. I'm going to start the timer. You go first, you go second, and we're going to hammer out all the different opinions and figure out how to get this thing to work. So I think all of that works really nicely for this card.
Well, and all the creativity that comes along with Leo, and it's like all the creative ideas, perhaps. And, 5 is about change. So it's like maybe that creative idea is not the whole picture, but, sharing it, like you say, taking turns and sharing their information with each other, they can really create something amazing.
Yeah, I agree, and I really like that interpretation as well. I definitely see the wands also as creativity generally, and Leo, adding the Leo component to that. That's really beautiful. I did want to say while we're in the Five of Wands that this card, interestingly, is the one that starts the sequence according to the Golden Dawn uh, philosophy and approach to this, and it is due to the heliacal rising of Sirius. Now that whole thing gets fairly complicated, um, including the including both time elapsed since the Egyptians were watching the stars as well as precession, and just a variety of other factors that join together to make this fairly complicated. And a lot of, I think most astrologers tend to place that heliacal rising of Sirius at the beginning of Cancer and associate that with the Thema Mundi, which is the Cancer rising chart. But I believe, in defense of the Golden Dawn, I believe that the heliacal rising of Sirius around the time they were working, around 1900, was in Leo. Um, and I'd have to double check that, but there are some really interesting articles that you can find. If I can give a plug to somebody, um, uh, Universal Workshop, which does astronomy articles, has a really nice explanation of the heliacal rising of Sirius and dates for modern times and for, I think, 2000 BCE, I think, is the date that he picked to estimate the Egyptian heliacal rising. And he's got like 3 or maybe even 4 articles on it where he covers some different aspects of it in a lot of detail. So that's a really good reference to go if you want to solve that mystery of why the Golden Dawn started it in Leo and the Thema Mundi puts Cancer rising.
Well, thank you for that. And one last comment is that all the hands are very different. So to me, it makes me think of different classes of people or different, um, if they had different careers, that they come from different tribes or they come from different cities to come together to work on something. So it's collaborative of inclusive of all.
Oh, that's a fabulous interpretation. I really love that. Yeah, absolutely. I completely see that in this card. Nice.
Okay, we're going to go on to the aspects to Saturn, since Saturn is Saturn in Leo, but Saturn right now is in Pisces, and we're just going to talk briefly about the aspects that Saturn's making on this day as a reference. So Saturn is opposite Juno, and Juno's about relationships. And then Saturn is trine to Pallas Athena, and Pallas is um, about strategy and wisdom. And then Saturn is sextile to the ascendant. Um, so to me, it's like talking about our relationships. Are we too regimental with our relationships with that opposition to Juno, or do we need to make some adjustments with relationships to work on them, and like make a plan or a strategy with that Pallas Athena. And then the ascendant is on an individual level, perhaps. Would you like to add to what's the astrology chart gives
Yeah,
us?
and I really like what you've said. I do want to point out really quickly, and then I'll probably respond to some of those things you said, that this is an ingress chart for the sun entering the first decan of Leo, which is the sun entering Leo. So again, it just, this would be kind of symbolic of the energy of that first decan for this year. And I do like the relationship stuff that you pointed out. When we've got Saturn in the 11th opposite to Juno in the 6th, and Juno representing marriage and relationships, but being in the 6th house of those day-to-day routines, and Pallas Athena being there in the 7th house of relationships, even though she's the one that is more of the warrior and that wise strategist, as you said. And so there might, it's almost, and the highlight with the ascendant, because I think whenever there's an ascendant emphasis and you're talking to somebody about relationships, you really have to figure out how you fit in, which is our Leo. It's our Leo energy. Anyway, how do I fit into my relationships? And particularly, there's that energy of how do I fit into them on that day-to-day routine, and how can I work towards building that partnership energy. And with Pallas Athena, there needs some strategy to move away, perhaps, from that just Saturn Juno opposition and into the strategizing how this relationship's really going to work. So I kind of like this.
Right. Do I have time for relationship? Is this relationship working for me? And it can be, an intimate relationship, but it can just be where you even work. Is this, and just evaluating that. And it's like, do I really want to do this? And if you don't want to do it, start figuring out a plan to move beyond or to improve it.
Yeah,
So
I
you
love it.
ready to go on to the next one?
Yeah.
So we're in Leo Decan number 2. It's the 6 of Wands for victory. It's Jupiter in Leo, and it's from 10 degrees of Leo to 19 and 59 minutes of this, when the sun's in the sign of Leo, approximately from August 2nd to August 11th or 12th.
Yeah, absolutely. And so here is Jupiter in Leo. And it's really interesting to look at the sequence of these cards and see the 5 of Wands starting things and going to the 6 of Wands, conflict immediately into victory. And so it's a nice little starting point. We usually don't think of it seems a little that I think the idea of the 5 of Wands being the start of anything, I think, is a little bit counterintuitive. But anytime you start a story, everything's fine up until something different happens, and that thing has to upset the given circumstances, the everyday status quo, and initiate the story. And so that's our 5 of Wands energy. And one of the nice things that happens is, oh, and I was able to solve that one really quick, so I'm doing good. And then the story only gets more complicated from there. But that's our Jupiter in Leo energy. And so Jupiter is wisdom and the teacher. It can be the priest, the wise counselor or magistrate. All of those energies kind of work with Jupiter. And again, in Leo, and needing to be recognized, needing to be expressed. So that's just a start right there with the astrological energy. What are some things you think of with Jupiter and Leo?
Well, I agree with what you've said, and that there's success, and it's like, those, we have 6 wands there, so those 5 wands that were quite not sure how to put it together, it's like they're all standing up now, and then he's holding his wand, so it's like they've created and had success from what they created, or they were able to put up the tent and it stood up, it didn't fall down. And there is a teaching component, but it's like now we get to have a celebration, perhaps to celebrate our success and our victory.
Yeah, and I like how you pointed that out. The when you do notice the 5 wands and the placement of the 5 wands in this particular image, we definitely see them behind the guy on the horse, and he's got that victory wreath on his wand that he's holding. So we get the title of the card victory that right there, but the fact that he's leading those other 5, it's like we needed a leader to come and help us, and that's Jupiter coming along and saying, okay, here's what you do, I'll tell you what's going to work. And Jupiter is the wise leader. He's the generous leader, as opposed to Saturn, which is more of the strict disciplinarian. Saturn is the stick and Jupiter is the carrot. And so, and it looks like in today's tarot language, it looks like the Jupiter, the carrot energy, wins out and succeeds in getting those wands all lined up.
Yes, that's beautiful. So we ready to go on to the next slide?
um, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, and then one of our audience members was asking about getting a consultation, and Joy and I both do consultations. So if you go to our websites and contact us, we'd be more than happy to set you up with an appointment. So now we're at Decan 2, the aspects to Jupiter. Why don't you jump in with this one?
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, we're at the sun entering the second decan right now, sun at 10 degrees of Leo. And so as an ingress chart, this will have a general sense of energy that would last throughout the 10 days that the sun is passing through this decan. What we've got going on here, we've got Mars moving in towards a conjunction with Jupiter. It looks like they are, I think that's 8. I should look at my printout. I think that Mars is at 8 and Jupiter is at 14. So they're about 6 degrees apart. Yeah, okay, I can see this better. And then Jupiter at 14 is square. Well, you have the trine marked over to the ascendant at 16 degrees of Libra, and also square to Saturn down there in Pisces at 18 degrees of Pisces. And I think some of these, so we're interesting. So we had our quarrel of the leaders, and Mars to me is always the warrior. So he is moving towards Jupiter and saying, okay, I'm going to choose this leader over that really strict disciplinarian that he managed boot camp, but now I actually want to go out and battle somebody because that's going to be more fun. And so I think those are some of the things that we're looking at here. It is interesting that Saturn's in the 5th house, which is in the natural order of the chart would be associated with Leo, and get some of according to some philosophies, would take some of its meanings from Leo, and that's where you get 5th house creativity and some things like that. And so it is kind of putting Saturn into that creative spot and saying, hey, let's try to lighten you up a little bit. Let's try to give you a little bit more fun in your life. And then, and I think with Jupiter square Saturn, it's just the battle of those 2 types of leadership. And again, putting the ascendant into it, which is the self, how does the self relate to the two of these? And the self, again, like Mars, is saying, well, I work really well with Jupiter. I want to have that easygoing relationship with leadership right now. Uh, I won't go any further. I won't go into any kind of mundane astrology. Let's just stick to psychological.
That sounds good. Well, and too, like, Saturn can be the discipline to do the creative process. It's like, I need to make a schedule. Maybe I don't answer my phone for a couple hours so I can write or I can paint or whatever the process might be. So, you can use it in a positive way. But I agree with everything you said. So we're going to move on to decan number 3. So we have the Seven of Wands, Valor, Mars in Leo, and it's Leo 20 degrees to 29 and 59 minutes. And approximate dates is August 12th to the 22nd or 23rd.
And so, starting with the astrology here, we definitely see that Mars energy coming through nice and strong in the card image. With that guy always at the high ground, fighting off a number of other opponents. And Mars, of course, being the warrior, being the what you'll fight for, what is important to you, what you're willing to fight for. And Mars can be ambition, and so some of that fighting quality, that ambitious or just having energy, being motivated, that kind of energy in the sign of Leo, which again was that self-expression, we can feel the excitement and the vigor that we get with this astrological placement. And it ties in really nicely, I think, with that card image, because that guy is like, you guys can't hold me down. I'll take on all 6 of you. This is not going to be a problem. So I definitely see that playing out in this card image.
Right. Join me or leave me alone.
Exactly. And I think in terms of our overall story from the 5 to the 6 to the 7th, we start our story with a conflict. We immediately have a victory. And what does the victory do for us? It makes us stronger so that we can take on more. We're like, a little win is a great way to start things off, especially. And if you think about creativity and you think about that 5, 6, 7 sequence, and what happens whenever you try to start something creative? Oh my God, 5 of Wands. There's so many moving parts. I don't know how to get them. I can't schedule it. I don't have my leadership in place. I don't have my schedule. I can't organize my materials. I don't know when to start. It seems overwhelming. The project's too big. All of those things are the first things that you think of. And then from there, you go into Jupiter. Oh, look, I got to start. Oh, I figured this out. I figured out the first thing to do. And then where do you go from that initial win? The other things fall into place. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got this. I can do this project. And so a lot of times it's just diving into the fray and the confusion and the frustration of the 5 of Wands so that you can have that initial victory and then move on to this 7, which is just like, I got this. I'll take all comers.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And we have a viewer from South Africa that says hello, so we say hello back.
Hi. Welcome.
So are we ready to go on to the astrology of Mars at this time?
Yeah, sure.
So decan 3, the aspects to Mars, we have Mars conjunct Jupiter, and it's gotten a little bit closer. And then we have Mars in a quincunx to the moon, and Mars is sextile to the ascendant. So all these have been had an ascendant component, and then Mars square Saturn as we had in the last decan. And the moon moves pretty quickly, so I hemmed and hawed should I add it in, but it's still there, so it's like I put it in. And the quincunx is lots of times a little bit of an adjustment. is being asked of us. And so, the moon is our emotional nature, so to speak. So, maybe we need um, an emotional adjustment.
I think
and
Mars
and
would be happy to provide that.
right,
Yes,
and
I
we
bet.
still have this Saturn um, square the Mars Jupiter. So, there's still this, you know, maybe push pull, and it's like, how does this work? And I need to adjust this, but how can I use this? Because I also think of squares as like the brakes in our car. It's, a friction, but it's a necessary friction. So how can we use it in a positive way? And then it goes back to the ascendant of ourselves. So what changes? And they've all been sextile. I think this one and the one before, I don't remember the first one, but
One of them was trine. Yeah, two were
okay.
sextile and one was trine. Yeah.
Thank you. But it's like I kind of am enjoying this energy that's in the background or supporting, we could say, of the Leo decan, the Leo energy. So this would be a really good time to initiate some kind of project, even though we're going to have Mercury going retrograde, but you can do the research on this. Is a great time to do the research on it. So what would you like to say about Mars?
Yeah, absolutely. I love all that. I do. I'm always fascinated by that self and other dichotomy, and that ascendant. It's kind of appropriate for Leo questions, especially with the sun's opposite to Pluto. A Leo Aquarius opposition. What One of the things that's really interesting here is that we do have that ascendant activated and Aries ascendant, which is ruled by Mars, and then that moon over there in the seventh house. And so Mars is quincunx, but another word for that is inversion. And so the thing about aversion, of course, or quincunx, either way, in conjunct. I like the word in conjunct too, because it says in the word itself, it's not conjunct. There is nothing similar to these things. I mean, they don't share gender. They don't share the mode. They don't share element. There's no connection. So when Mars is trying to relate to the moon, it's like, I got nothing here. I've got no connection. And that is that relationship to the seventh house of the other. But the moon is there, which is our emotions. It's our private self. And so Mars is even, I mean, you would think of the moon in the seventh house is really nice. It's like I feel the most myself and the most emotionally fulfilled when I am in the seventh house of partnership. But Mars is liking the ascendant better and saying, but I rule the ascendant, which is that sense of self, the core identity and the basic personality. And so we've got this, and I don't understand anything about the moon. So it's a really nice way of, again, the moon loving that partnership, but Mars saying, I think it's important to not lose your own sense of self in here. So yeah, really, really a nice little approach to our third decan time, 10-day time period, 10-day week.
Well, and maybe at that time we need to detach a little bit from our emotions. I'm not saying to completely detach, but maybe, it's like, okay, recognize what the emotion is, but, like try to not get too pulled in by whatever's going on.
Well, and I didn't actually say this, but Mars is ruling the moon as well. He's ruling the ascendant and the moon. And so I assume, I didn't ask you what house system we're using. We're not using whole signs, obviously. People are
Placidus.
shaking their head going, what? That moon is not in the seventh house. What are you talking about? And it's like, it's okay, calm down. We're using Placidus. um, but that is almost even more interesting, because even though that Mars position is in conjunct with the moon, it is ruling that energy. And so, yeah, it really ties it ties those things together in a really nice way.
Well, thank you. That was great. Okay, now we're going to go into the court card. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just dive right in, please.
Yeah, so our court card is King of Wands, which in this deck is called Rods, and this is one of my all-time favorite. Morgan Greer is one of my all-time favorite decks. One of the very first, it's like the second deck I got, I think. So that I've had for a really long time. Remember, the Golden Dawn with the court cards does assign the card to the last decan of the previous sign. So it's the last decan of Cancer and the first 2 decans of Leo. I find that that's a little fussy, and I don't bother using that. I just give King of Wands to Leo. It's a little more simple to me and straightforward, and seems to work really well. But there's certainly arguments for doing it the way that it was intended to be done. So I just call the King of Wands Leo. In terms of card interpretation, the kings are at the height of their craft. They express the mastery of the suit. Wands is business and enterprise, among other things. And so as business and enterprise, I usually see the King of Wands as being the president of a company or the owner of a company, that kind of thing. Whereas the Queen of Wands, which is Aries, in terms of business and enterprise, she's a lot more independent. So she is like an entrepreneur or a solopreneur, whereas the King is a little more established. That fits the fixed sign quality. And so he might own the company or be the president of something, of a larger company or something like that. In terms of the creativity of the suit of Wands, that obviously just fits the Leo energy really well, but it does represent a mastery of that craft, of that creativity, and creative expression. Again, I apparently expression is my favorite word today. What are some things you think of with that king?
Well, yeah, and he's proud of what he's accomplished and what he does. I would say he probably wouldn't own a company that he didn't believe in. He'd have to believe in it. So, yes, I like that, and that was great what you shared. I really liked what you said, and I agree with you. I just use it as for the sign Leo myself, even though I'm aware that there's other ways to use the card, but I use it the same way. So did you want to say anything more about the King of Wands?
I think we're good. We could go on all day with any one of these.
Well, and then Joy found an interesting aspect with the 3 planets that we're highlighting today. So Mars, Jupiter is square to Saturn. So do you want to talk any more about that? We've kind of briefly touched on that, but the exact conjunction happens on August 14th.
Yeah, and so this is a chart for the Mars-Jupiter conjunction, and you can see that it is pretty tightly. They finally conjoin at 16 degrees, and it is a pretty tight square over to Saturn and Pisces at 17 degrees. Interestingly, our ascendant at 16 degrees is very tightly square to the Mars-Jupiter conjunction. Now, the grand square that is indicated in this cross is actually built off of Venus there at 11 degrees of Virgo, but it would be an even, and that's a pretty precise looking grand square as it is. But if you built that square off of that ascendant, it would be even more precise in terms of those 90-degree angles. And the moon down in Sagittarius at 15, we're definitely seeing a very distinct grand square in the mutable signs. And those squares, a lot of times, I always think of squares as very foundational. The squares are squares are headbutting, oppositions are tug of war. And so when we arrange them also nice and neatly in this Grand Cross package, we get all the angles, all the things that are pushing away and all the things that are conflicting into a perfect tension. And so it's not that easygoing, like grand trine that's just so flowing and so moving. We get this very strong set of tense relationships that are almost at kind of a standoff to each other. It is fascinating to pull the exact chart because that Mars Jupiter thing is right up there on the midheaven. I'll probably talk about that, but I have my quote that I want to share, and I was telling Liz this earlier. I found this quote totally by accident. I was looking up something else, and I came across it very accidentally, but it is from the Centiloquium, which is 100 aphorisms that are attributed to Ptolemy. And in the Centiloquium, he says, if either of the infortunes, which of course are Mars and Saturn, be in Gemini, which Mars is, and the other in Pisces, which Saturn is, his hands or feet shall be cut off according to the signification of the sign wherein the planet is posited, which is most malevolent. And so I don't know if neither Mars nor Saturn are debilitated in their appropriate signs right now. I would say Mars probably is less malevolent in that it is applying to Jupiter, and in that it is on an they're all strong because they're on angles, but in that it's on the midheaven and approaching the midheaven. So I would think, and it is the highest planet in the chart. So I think Saturn would be the most malevolent. And so Mars and Gemini, that's hands. Saturn and Pisces is feet. And I mentioned this in another talk that I did somewhere recently, and an audience member suggested a modern interpretation rather than these, these old, somebody's going to get their hands or feet cut off. A modern interpretation, they thought of a manicure, pedicure, even. But I'm still like, be careful. Like, don't get your cuticles ripped if you go get a manicure. I still think there should be a little bit of a warning for that.
Maybe not the best time for the manicure or the pedicure. Maybe put it off for the next week or something, because Mars moves pretty quickly right now. So
yeah, maybe so. But I think it's interesting to explore. I mean, there's so much here. This to me is just a really fascinating combination of planets and with that Grand Cross. And the idea of hands and feet, Gemini and Pisces, kind of the hands being emphasized a little bit more, and the constructive ability of that. And we could even say, I don't know, this is, again, I tend to go psychological on a lot of my interpretations as opposed to mundane or something like that. But hands to me, and we saw a lot of hands in our cards today, hands to me are about building something and coming together and sharing and pitching in. And feet to me, for some reason, it just makes me think of walking away. And so I think that a lot of this conflict, and we saw a lot of our themes that are kind of slowly being drawn out of our cards and drawn out of the astrology that we've been talking about, is this self and other. It is this creativity. How do I express myself? It's leadership. and the different leadership styles. And it's like, how can I express myself better in partnership? How do I connect with my leadership? How do I be a better leader? All of these things are building as themes. And then with this kind of culminating chart of that Mars Jupiter conjunction in Gemini, is like, how do I literally build with my hands and get other hands to join in with Jupiter as our leader, to build something that is visible, that is midheaven, that's visible, that is that brings even more people towards it. That's a light that lights the way, not the spotlight that shines on me. It's like, yay, it's me. It's more like the light that lights the way and leads people towards something. And and Saturn is setting over there in the 7th house. He's definitely representing partnership, but this is bigger than just partnership. And that Saturn is setting and saying, this is something that is ending, that is going away. And Venus is rising. The curmudgeonly leader is setting the discipline, which I like discipline. I don't want that to leave me, but at the same time, maybe the overly disciplined thing has to set, and the more generous Jupiter is culminating. The loving, nurturing Venus is rising and saying, let me come in and lend my aid to this experience now. So, and the moon down at the bottom. I didn't even cover all of them. I hand off to you. This is why readings with me take a long time. I'm like, oh my God, and the moon next.
Well, and it makes me think of maybe, to rest or take good care of our hands and feet. It's like maybe, sit down with our feet up for a little while, or rub some lotion on them, or get a foot massage or a hand massage or something like to that. And, with this Grand Cross, it's like, which direction do you go in? It's like there could be 4 demands and they're equally demanding, and which one do you do first? And sometimes it's a little difficult to make the choice, but then lots of times once you make that choice and do it, then it all kind of culminates and happens, and it's all taken care of.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and maybe I love the moon as resting, and the IC as resting. Obviously, those both work so beautifully together, but it's also Sagittarius that's resting and Gemini that's culminating. And let's try to, it's like, let's build closer to home. Let's build closer to home. Let's help our neighbors. Let's
Yeah.
the dreams of the moon will eventually lead us towards the more expansive objectives, but for now, our emphasis is on let's build locally. Let's build with our neighbors.
Right. Take care of things, and, maybe not be so busy running, long distances perhaps.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's fantastic. So,
I love
um,
it.
so do you have any like parting words or things to leave people with for the month of the Suns in Leo?
Oh, I'm not very good at conclusions.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I just didn't want to, if you had something else you wanted to add in there. So I'll go to the quote that I found. The vibrations of Leo, ruled by the sun itself, are things you can actually feel throughout your whole being in the presence of a lion or a lioness. And that's by Linda Goodman. And she was an astrologer. And I just really like that quote. And so we would really like to have you come back and enjoy more episodes of the Astrology Star Sisters Talk over tea. And Joy and I both have newsletters and YouTube channels, so we'd love to have you subscribe to both of those, and the information is there. You can always pause your video to get that down. And more upcoming episodes. I do 3 episodes with Justin, the full moon forecast, the astrology forecast for each month. And we started a Chiron asteroid series. And the Astrology Star Sisters do 3 or 4 episodes each month. And Joy will be back next month doing the Virgo Decans with me. And we really appreciate our audience that's been here today and the people that have made comments. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for making comments. And I'll try and learn to be able to respond and still be running the show, but right now I'm not able to do that. Sorry. And then I'm on Talk Cosmos on August 4th at 1 p.m. about the Leo new moon. I'm on the archetypal symbol team, so love to see you there, and it's live on my channel. And again, to get a hold of Joy, it's her website's joyvernon.com, and my website is alightpath.com. And we always enjoy hearing from you. And we're both available for consultations, and you can make appointments through our websites, I believe. Thank you, Joy, for joining me, and I look forward to having you back next month.
Yeah, absolutely. This was fun. Thank you so much, Liz.
Okay, and we're going to say goodbye for now.